Welcome to our Jizo garden here at Great Vow Zen Monastery. During the time of the COVID pandemic, we can't have guests, so we thought we'd make a film so that you could get a virtual tour of this beautiful garden. This is a remembrance garden in remembrance of people who've died, in particular of children who died. And we have a ceremony several times a year, usually pre-pandemic, and post-pandemic we'll do it again for remembering people who've died. And we have in this garden 108 statues. We call them Jizo statues. They were donated by Reverend Matsuura, who is the abbot, just retiring, of Mibudera, a temple in Kyoto, a very old temple which has a Jizo as its central image. As Kyoto has expanded and they've dug up land for subways or for new housing developments, they've discovered many gravestones hidden around the outskirts of Kyoto, and they bring those to Mibudera. So Reverend Matsuura has, I think, over 1,000, which he's arranged in a very beautiful pagoda there. So if you go to Kyoto, be sure to visit Mibudera. This is the stairway leading to the Jizo garden. And when we constructed the stairway, we purposely put in tiles from temples in 3 countries that have helped bring Buddhism, Zen Buddhism specifically, to America. So there are tiles from Sogenji in Japan. There's one here. And there are some smaller tiles from a temple in Korea, as I lived in Korea when I was young for several years. And then there are tiles at the top, which we'll show you from the Great Wall in China. And we have some lovely Jizos that people have made in our Jizo retreats. This one over here I made, and the technique is that you cast what's called Oregon carving stone inside a stovepipe, and you unmold it on day 2, and then you can actually carve it with a kitchen knife. And then after about 4 days it hardens, so you have to get your work done in a few days. And here's another one, stovepipe Jizo here. And then this is a Jizo from Japan. And the statue had been broken, and we buried part of it into the earth, the broken part, so that it represents Earth Store Bodhisattva emerging from the earth. As we walk through the garden, you'll see lots of Jizos that people have made or placed here in remembrance of someone. People always ask us, how do you get them to grow moss on them? And actually the problem in Oregon is how to have moss not grow on them. But it's very sweet. Often they have a beard, or they're little eyelashes. The moss makes little eyelashes. It's very cute. Let's go down this little side path here, and I'll show you something. This is an example of how the garden looks right after a Jizo ceremony, when people have made remembrance tokens that are fresh. So this Jizo has a knitted or crocheted hat and a beautiful bib. This one over here has a hat and a bib and some beads, alphabet beads, and some other beautiful little remembrance tokens. This little yellow toy telephone was brought by a foster mother who came to do a remembrance ceremony for a child that she had been born addicted, and then she had fostered the baby for a year or so. And then the child went back home and unfortunately was the victim of child abuse and died. And this was all she had left of his possessions, and so she brought it to leave it here. This is our Jizo Mailbox, which was made by one of our members at my request. And it says, write a letter to Jizo. And on this side are writing supplies. So there are pens, pencils, writing paper, and envelopes. And then people can mail their message to Jizo over here and put up a flag to let me know, oh, there's a message here. So we have one message here. which is from a little boy whose brother was stillborn. So they have a Jizo in the garden, but this is a letter. It says, "Love you, Raja, from Vajra, your little brother." So I'll take this with me. I have a collection of these notes. Often I come to the Jizo garden and find that new things have been left here because people know that they can come here anytime and leave memorial tokens. And this is a memorial for a dog who died. It's actually one of our residents was her pet dog. So this is a very beautiful memorial that she made for her dog. This is an example of a memorial for a baby who died, and the family comes and leaves tokens of remembrance. Now we're entering the place where we do our remembrance ceremonies. So we have this beautiful clearing, which was here when we moved here over 20 years ago. And we have these two giant trees, probably over 100 years old. They've twisted around each other and made one united tree. So we call them the parent tree. It's a big leaf maple tree, or trees. And look here, there's a saw cut here, like somebody tried to start to saw this tree down, but it still lived and joined this other tree. And one of the Jizos that's in this cave came from a high school class of kids that couldn't do well in a regular high school, so they were in an alternative school. And when we were doing our Jizos for Peace pilgrimage, they each made a little Jizo statue out of wax, out of beeswax, and brought them here, and they were so sweet. They were so sweet. One was like, I don't know, 6'8", big guy, teenager, and he was just trembling. And he said, is it okay if I take my Jizo and put it in here? I said, yes, it's fine. And this is a stone with a Jizo etched on it that was done by our beloved friend Dan O'Conroy, who lived here at the monastery for the last few years of his life. And before that, before he became ill, he had painted the entire monastery inside and out, I think, maybe twice, because he was a house painter. This Jizo is in remembrance of one of our members named Alex, and he was an artist, both a painter and a ceramic artist. And he began experiencing some mental difficulties and died in a few years of what turned out to be mad cow disease, a genetic form of mad cow disease. And down here at the base is someone's made a little boat, and there's a Jizo ferrying people to the other side. So these are some of the 108 stone figures, Buddhist figures, that were donated by Reverend Matsuura from Mibudera Temple. And you can see they're very weathered, they're very old. And you can see more. We're going to do a little sweep so you can see them. And they surround the clearing where we do the Jizo ceremony. So one of our dear friends is Ajahn Amaro, who was abbot of Abhayagiri Monastery in Northern California and is now in England, and is the abbot of Amravati. He's a Theravada monk. And at Abhayagiri they had a young boy from an Asian family who became sick with cancer and died. He was a very sweet child, he said. And they asked for a Jizo statue to remember him. So we sent a Jizo statue like this. And over the years, it began to deteriorate like this. And they realized that the mice were eating the Jizo statue to get calcium, presumably. So Ajahn Amaro was very moved by this because his mother in England, before he became a monk in Thailand, his mother used to feed the mice in the house, the wild mice. And when she became sick and was dying, she said, "Who will feed the mice?" And so Ajahn Amro, this is years later, realized that Jizo is feeding the mice. One of our members discovered that she loved to make peace poles and paint them. And we have several around the monastery. This is one in the Jizo garden. And on this side it says, "Deep peace from the quiet earth." And on this side it says, "Listen, nature's wisdom flows." And then on this side it says, "Seek beauty everywhere." And over here it says, "In the forest, the great door opens." This is a memorial made by one of our members for his daughter who died in her mid-20s. She died actually of lung cancer. She had never smoked, so it was quite mysterious, but very rapidly progressive. And she was a very sweet young woman. And he's a carpenter, so he made this beautiful altar for her. This is the part of the Jizo Garden path called the Avenue of Nothing is Broken. So when something breaks at the monastery, people bring it to me and I glue it back together or figure out how to use it as part of our garden so that its life continues to be useful. And that's true of all of us. No one is broken. Everyone's life has a purpose and fits into the giant jigsaw puzzle that makes up this universe. So this is an example here. This is a bowl from the kitchen that broke. And so now it's a Jizo memorial. These beautiful pink flowers that are blooming here are a wild bleeding heart. Bleeding heart is so appropriate for a remembrance garden because when someone dies, it leaves a hole in our heart shaped like that unique person. And that hole will never close, but it will soften, filled with memories and love. This is another example of nothing is broken. Everything is useful. This actually belonged to my mother-in-law. It's a fancy serving dish. This is another example of nothing is broken. This Jizo is sitting on a bowl that was broken, and then this was a plate. Thanks so much for joining us in our tour of our Jizo garden here at Great Vow Zen Monastery. And know that you're welcome to visit anytime, even during the time of COVID. Because it's outdoors, and if somebody stops you, just say, "I'm here to visit the Jizo garden." And hopefully, by the end of the year, we'll be able to begin doing our remembrance ceremonies again.